Hi there, Tina Shiver, registered dietitian and IFM certified practitioner. Today I'm going to demo a dish from the IFM Elimination Food Plan. The dish that I chose is the quinoa salad with chicken, grapes, and almonds. It happens to be one of my favorite, and I've had feedback from a lot of my clients that it's also one of their favorites. I've been practicing for over 20 years, and one of the things that I hear from a lot of my patients is that they have a hard time putting together food ideas, recipes. They are trying to learn how to cook. They've never really cooked before, and now they're having to change their diet and eliminate things like gluten and dairy and sugar and corn, and they're like, what am I going to eat and how am I going to cook? So today I'm going to take all of you through a really simple method on how to cook this dish. And what's great about this dish is you can take it and expand it more. So the quinoa salad could be your base, and then you could add other types of protein, and you could add other types of flavors to it. So hopefully we'll have a lot of fun today, and you will too, and you'll go home and try this recipe and then encourage your patients to try. So we're gonna start with making the quinoa because that's kind of like gonna take a little while to cook. And I started with the quinoa that I bought was this tricolor quinoa, and it's a mix of a red and a white or a brown quinoa. Some people like one or the other, so they might want to just buy a red quinoa. It's up to you, but again, I like to buy it mixed. And I rinsed it, and it tells you this in the recipe that you want to rinse it first just to make sure that you get any of the residue off of it. So that's already done, and I have about 1.25 cups of quinoa that I'm using today. And in the recipe, it says 2 cups of water. I tend to increase the water, probably because I use the heat. I tend to turn the heat up. I'm usually in a hurry. So if you're gonna cook the quinoa on low, 2 cups of water might work. But if you need to add some along the way, please do that. You don't want the quinoa to be crunchy. You want the quinoa to be cooked through, which means it's gonna be soft. So I'm going to turn the water on. The water is already boiling, so I'm just going to turn it on and bring it back up to a boil. And then we're going to simmer it. And it's probably going to take anywhere between 15 and 20 minutes. And you'll see, we'll come back to this. If it soaks up too much of the water too quickly, then I'll add more, and I promise you it won't mess your quinoa up. So we're going to let that cook, and remember that that's there. Then we're going to go ahead and make the sauce that we're going to use for the salad. And I've kind of already prepped a lot of that, so I've made it really easy. So we're going to use a bowl of which we'll put all of our ingredients in. And we're going to use some vinegar. And the vinegar can either be a rice vinegar or it can be a balsamic vinegar. Either way. So I'm going to go with a rice vinegar because it's lighter. I like the flavor of it. With balsamic, it tends to be a little bit more pungent. So I want something light. So I don't measure, and know that in your recipe, all the measurements are there. So make sure the first time that you make this recipe that you measure. But I tend to have a sense of how much to use, and I like to adapt it along the way. So I'm going to use about a teaspoon of the white vinegar. And then I'm going to add to that some lemon juice and some lime juice. And I've already squeezed the lemon and lime juice. So I took a fresh lime and a fresh lemon, and I squeezed it. I made sure I got all the seeds out. So we're going to add that. I've also made this dish with an orange. So sometimes I'll squeeze a little bit of orange in there just to give it another type of flavor. So again, feel free to play around with this dish once you make it one time. First, make it on your own, as is, and then you can play around from there. So then I'm going to add a little bit of sea salt, just because I want to add that to the sauce. Now, I am not using sea salt. I'm going to use a pink Himalayan salt. I love this. This actually came from France. So I'm going to use a little bit of that, and then I'm going to use a little bit of pepper. It calls for about 1/4 teaspoon of pepper. So I'm going to make sure. And I'm going to start with probably about 1/2 of a teaspoon, about 1/8. And then I'll add more when I add the quinoa. Now the quinoa, now this is boiling. So we're gonna go back to this and I'm gonna turn it on low so that it will start to simmer. And I might have to take the top off a little bit if it starts to cook too fast. So right now I'm gonna keep it covered and we're just gonna watch it to make sure it doesn't cook too quickly. So we have right now the lime juice, the lemon juice, the vinegar, we have the sea salt. We're gonna add a couple of tablespoons of olive oil. I use the cold pressed organic. Everybody has their favorite brand. I picked the California Olive Ranch today, but I tend to sample different ones. And then, which makes this whole dish, we're gonna use some fresh mint. Now this came from my garden. I went to all the grocery stores to try to find mint. And there's none in the grocery store. So I was thankful that my garden has been flourishing with some of the herbs. So I'm gonna take the mint and take this cutting board and I am going to pull the leaves. So it's really simple to just pull some of these leaves. And it's really important that you use enough of the mint because you want the flavor to blend in with the basil. It's fabulous. I made this dish for my assistant the other day, and she said that each time she took a bite of the dish, she could taste a different flavor. So I thought that was pretty cool. So we're gonna use about, I think it's about a half a cup of fresh mint, a half a cup of basil, and a quarter cup of cilantro. And I found the basil and the cilantro in the grocery store. My basil is not ready yet in the garden. So if any of you have a chance to start a little herb garden, then it's a much better flavor in your salads than the dried are. So we're gonna cut this mint. And everybody's gonna cut it up differently. I tend to leave some larger pieces in there. That's just a preference because I love the taste of mint. So it's up to you. I'm gonna continue to cut this up. Okay, there we go. And we're gonna add the mint. A little bit left in here. Let's finish that. And then we're gonna add basil. Now, I will tell you that some people do not like the flavor of cilantro. I was just thinking about that. It's one of those love-hate relationships. You either love cilantro or you don't. I think some people think it tastes kind of soapy. So if you don't like cilantro and you prefer not to use it, then use parsley instead. And I would use the flat leaf parsley. It will give it a different flavor, but it's an option. Okay, so we have, and this basil, the smell of it is fabulous. There are different types of basil that you can also find in the store. There's cinnamon basil. This is just a regular basil that I found in the produce section in the grocery store. Okay, I'm gonna chop this up a little bit more because basil tends to have a lot of flavor. So I don't want somebody to get a huge leaf in their mouth. Okay, so we've got the basil, we have the cilantro, which is next. And the cilantro is pretty much cut up. Let me put that over there. And so again, you want to cut this or chop this however you'd like. There we go. Cilantro is a little bit harder to chop. If you have an herb chopper, that would be nice. I don't, so I just usually tend to use a knife. Okay, so there's all the flavor. So we've got a little bit of white vinegar, rice vinegar. We have, use this. Yeah. So we have a little bit of rice vinegar. I'm gonna mix this together. See that? Flavors are gonna marinate in that wonderful olive oil and rice vinegar. Looks lovely. Okay, so what's next? So we have the vinegar, we have the olive oil, we have all of the herbs, and then what we're going to add next is going to be the quinoa once it's done, and it's cooking nicely. So it looks like the 3 cups of water worked really nice in here. So while we're waiting on the quinoa, we're going to roast some, toast some almonds. Let's just go ahead and we're going to go ahead and toast the almonds. You turn this on. I tend to turn this on high, and then you'll have to turn it down so it doesn't take long. Some people will take the almonds and they'll spread them out on a baking pan and they'll stick them in the oven. I tend to want a little bit faster result. I like to make it easier on people. You can buy roasted almonds. The only downside about that is sometimes they've been roasted in an oil, and a lot of times it's a peanut oil. And with the elimination diet, you want to stay away from peanut oil. So buy the raw almonds if you can and start toasting them on the oven. So that'll take a little while. So then what we're going to do is we're going to add some grapes. I chose red grapes, or actually these are purple grapes, not red grapes. And the flavor in these are fabulous. So again, high in antioxidant nutrients, and these add a lot of flavor to the dish. So I'm going to slice these in half like this. We're going to use a couple of cups of grapes. If you prefer green, go for the green. Again, I was looking for color, and I'm looking for a nice flavor. It adds a sweetness to this dish as well. Another idea is if you did not want to use grapes, you could choose another fruit that is on the IFM plan if you wanted to switch it around. Something like maybe a sliced apple, or maybe some blueberries would be different as well. All right. So these are almost done. All right, so I'm super excited. I found a new herb chopper, of which you put your herbs in, and at the top, make sure you lock it because it might go flying away. And then basically all you're doing is you're pulling. So it's all non-electric. Pretty cool. And you have chopped herbs. So that's easy for somebody like me who doesn't want to chop, but it's got the herbs right at the perfect size as well. All right, so we have almonds ready. They're already toasted, and they're going to go into this yummy quinoa dish. They're still a little bit warm, but they should be fine. So we're going to take a little bit of a larger knife like this, and all we're going to do is chop it. And if you're not used to chopping any kind of nuts, you start at the top of the knife and you just bring it down like that. And I usually like to roast the almonds or the nuts first, and then I'll chop them. It's just easier for me. So in this dish, we're going to use about a half of a cup of sliced slivered almonds. This might be a little bit more than a half of a cup, so we'll try to measure that out for everybody so that you know that we're using the right amount. And then the quinoa should be ready pretty quickly. I think it's almost there. So then what we're going to do is we're going to take all of these ingredients that we've chopped up, and we're going to add them to that wonderful marinade that we put together, which included the basil and the cilantro and the mint. And then we're going to mix everything together. Now I made some chicken the other night, which we're going to add, or last night, which we're going to add to this dish. And another thought is if you don't want to cook the chicken on your own, you could buy a roasted chicken, like a rotisserie would be really nice. And you're going to shred the chicken and you're going to add it to the quinoa dish at the end. For those of you that are vegetarians or vegans, another idea is instead of the chicken, for you to use something like chickpeas, or black beans would be really good in this dish as well. So that gives y'all an option. Or you could also have the quinoa salad on the side, and then you could add some fish to it, which would be really yummy, like some salmon. So let's check to see. The quinoa is almost there. As you can see, still a little bit of water in there. So it's cooking nicely. So I think I know why mine tends to cook so fast is because I use a gas grill at home. And this particular oven or stove is a glass top. And so the heat is a little different. So be aware of that. If you have a gas stove, it's a little bit more difficult to turn it down so low without turning it off. So know that your quinoa might cook faster, and you also might need to use a little bit more water. We're almost at the end of the recipe here, and we're gonna chop up spinach. I used a nice baby spinach, nice and green, lots of antioxidants in spinach. Really, really good for you. A lot of fiber and a lot of nice green color. So you can chop your spinach up however you like. I tend to chop it up a little bit more probably than most. But then what we're gonna do, the quinoa is ready. So let's take a look at it. It's nice and fluffy. It's a pretty color. A nice brown and yellow color, red and yellow. And you allow it to cool a little bit. And then we're gonna put it into the bowl here with the marinades. So we've got the spice, the herbs in there. We have salt and pepper, and we have the lemon, lime juice, and olive oil. We're gonna mix that together. Oh, that's gonna be really good. So still a lot of steam coming off. So you can allow it to cool a little bit more if you like. And then we're just gonna add all the ingredients. So your recipe says to add the cooled quinoa to the dressing and toss, and then add the chicken. And again, I shredded the chicken. So I used chicken breast, and you could use chicken thighs if you like, but chicken breast is nice. So we're gonna add that to the quinoa. And then next we're gonna add the grapes. So remember, we sliced the grapes in half. Lots of good color, lots of nice antioxidant nutrients. So you can see everything's coming together. Then we're going to add the nuts, the almonds, which have already been chopped. And I tend to add a few more nuts probably than what the recipe calls for. The recipe called for about a half a cup. And they're roasted and they're chopped. And then we're gonna add the chopped baby spinach. What are some other greens that you could add if you wanted to, or you could modify it with, or exchange it? Would be something like arugula would be really different. Or just a green lettuce or a red lettuce would be nice, or a mixed herb lettuce. There we go. So this is all coming together. Beautiful dish. And we're gonna add next some scallions, and I'm using the white and the green part of the scallion. Again, what's beautiful about the scallion is it's a prebiotic, so it's really, really good for the gut. There we go. Oh my gosh, that onion smells so good. So continue to mix it together. Now, what you would do is you would try it, you could taste it, and for those of you that like a little more salt and pepper, you might want to add that at the end. And voila, we have a nice quinoa salad with chicken, grapes, and almonds.